Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Mitch Cohen, franchisee with HomeVestors, Inc. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so before we get into it, there's plenty to talk about with houses these days. Before we get into it, tell us what HomeVestors, Inc. is.
HomeVestors, Inc. is simply the largest home buyer in the United States.
And largest home buyer in the United States.
Largest home buyer in the United States.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Are you still buying houses?
Still buying.
You're kidding. You haven't backed off?
Haven't backed off. Have to be a little bit more careful what you're buying and what you're buying it for.
You must be getting better prices.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what does that mean that you're a franchise? So HomeVestors is this large corporate structure that buys houses. They buy houses through folks like you?
They buy homes through franchisees, which is over 200 and I believe 50 franchisees at this time.
Okay. So you spend some money and you become a franchisee.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What expertise do you need, Mitch?
Well, I've been in the business 23 years, buying, renovating, and selling properties.
Right.
So I came into the HomeVestors family with some level of experience to begin with.
Okay. So your brand, your HomeVestors has a funny brand. For someone trying to market what you do for a living, your logo is "We buy ugly houses."
Absolutely
how is it that buying ugly houses sells?
Well, buying ugly houses doesn't necessarily sell. Buying ugly houses buys, which is ultimately where we're making the money. We're making money on the purchase side of the business.
Well, listen, I'm a retailer by nature and by work. And money's always made on the buy. Absolutely. Even in stocks. So you find, let's separate this business of buying houses. Pre the debacle that we're in now, there were still plenty of houses to buy?
Absolutely.
Are these people who are forced to sell?
Most of the time, they're in what we call an ugly situation.
That's why you call it ugly houses.
Absolutely. And they are either forced to sell, need to sell, or have been left a piece of property that they just don't know what to do with at that time. Okay. And we're an easy exit for them to get out with a guaranteed deal, all cash, where they know the closing date really means the closing date.
Right. So this is not, you're not buying dependent on getting a mortgage or depending upon getting a survey approved or blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, there's no free lunch. So if you are an easy buy, then you must be paying a very low price.
Absolutely. You have to be very careful, especially in these days, what you're purchasing for. But even when times were a little bit easier and before credit crunch and before it was hard to get mortgages, we were still very careful what we buy for because, again, as we were just talking about, the money is made on the buy. And if you pay too much and you're guaranteeing a good market ahead of you, it doesn't always work out like that.
So now we're in this really crunch, economic crunch, a lot of which was caused by folks buying houses that shouldn't.
Absolutely.
So that must be working as being an opportunity for you.
It certainly is an opportunity to buy at a deeper discount than we were buying 6 months ago, a year ago at this time.
But doesn't it feel bad to go to bed at night feeling as though you've taken advantage of people that have to sell their houses on a forced sale?
Absolutely not, because it is better for us to purchase from them, put some money in their pocket, as compared to getting foreclosed on, having nothing in return, not receiving any money, and being treated in a sort of disrespectful way.
Yeah, right. So somebody who can't make his mortgage payments, that knows they're on the brink of foreclosure, you give them a price on the house, they agree to take the price, and if they owe more to the bank, what is that called, a short sale?
Short sale.
If they owe more to the bank, that's got nothing to do with you. That's between them and the bank. They have to make their own kind of peace.
Absolutely.
Right.
I can only agree to buy what the house is worth, irregardless of what they owe.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so you buy the house, and then what do you do with it?
In my particular case, I buy it, I renovate it, and I sell it, for the most part, to first-time home buyers. There are a number of franchisees that will just assign the deal, assign the contract, or sell it to an investor.
Right. So, you know, the name of this show is Getting Their Money's Worth. Who's getting their money's worth with you? Is it the person who turns around and buys this renovated home? Is it the person who gives you the house in the first place? I mean, does everybody come out happy camper?
Well, I think everybody who's selling a house always wants as much as possible. And that would be human nature for me, for you,
Absolutely.
for anybody else.
And sometimes they want a number that's really not even valid.
It's not valid and it's not realistic.
Right.
All we could do is put an offer on the table that makes sense for us to purchase at and treat them in a respectful way, and also keep our word, saying that this is the price, this is what we're going to close at, this is the date you're going to close. And as long as we do that, it may not be as much as somebody ultimately wanted, but they know they have a deal on the table that's going to close.
Right. And if someone has to, if indeed someone has to move, it removes a lot of stress and angst.
Absolutely. We can close a deal in 5 to 7 days.
Really?
So it takes a lot of time frame off the table.
How do you know? How do you know? Do you have data with you? How do you know how much to offer?
We always have our data. I'm also familiar with the markets that we deal in. Been dealing for 23 years in 4 outer boroughs. We don't really deal in Manhattan, but Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, and Staten Island. We know most neighborhoods, know most blocks. And we go into their home with that information in hand. So when we make them an offer, which is generally on the spot, we have all our data in front of us.
Right. There's a lot of houses available, isn't it? Isn't that hurting? Is that hurting your business, all this inventory?
No, because for as many houses as there are on the market, there's still enough buyers out there looking to become homeowners for the first time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. So for every house, there's a buyer?
Absolutely, and it's still a much better idea to own than to rent.
Really? So it's hard to convince some people of that after all.
Sometimes, but we live in a big city, and many of the areas that HomeVestors deals in have a lot of people looking for houses. And yes, it may be harder to qualify someone today, but there's still enough qualified buyers out there to close.
So when you have a house, you renovate it, you flip it, you turn it over, someone comes to you. Are folks getting mortgages these days, Mitch?
Yeah, most of the homes that we sell are based upon getting FHA financing, where someone could still come in.
What is FHA? Is that Fannie?
Federal Housing Administration.
Is that Fannie and Freddie?
It's not Fannie and Freddie. Insured by HUD.
By HUD.
And they could purchase a home for 3% down.
3% down?
3% total cash out of pocket.
Really?
We're allowed, as the seller, to pay up to 6% of the closing costs, which basically covers everything.
Okay, so let's go slow, because after all, we want to give people their money.
Sure.
For folks out there, they have to have some kind of, they have to be credit worthy, though, don't they?
Absolutely. They need a minimum
this
credit score.
This is not like all that subprime stuff where people dreamed of having a home and they just went out and executed their dream.
Absolutely not. They have to verify their income, they have to verify their assets, and they have to show the ability to repay. And their credit history has to show that they've shown how to repay certain debts before, not just on a promise, by actual experience.
Okay, so for people who, and probably particularly this is most advantageous to first-time buyers.
Absolutely.
Right. So for folks who are out there who are renting and saying to themselves, this might be an opportunity for me to dip my toe in and buy my house because prices are down, it's an opportunity to buy. If they have a job, if they have a steady income, if they have a decent credit history, they can contact one of your franchisees.
Absolutely.
And with 3% cash down, they can apply for a Federal Housing Authority.
Federal Housing Administration mortgage, insured mortgage.
Insured mortgage.
And there are many lending institutions and banks that are happy to give these mortgages.
Do you apply for that through any commercial bank?
Commercial banks that deal in mortgages, FHA insured mortgages, but there's plenty of banks out there right now looking for this type of business. No one is that busy where they're going to not have the time to talk to you.
Right. And it's kind of a turnkey. You turn over a house that's move-in condition. Move-in
condition. All they need to be worried about is what's our mortgage payment and make sure that they can afford it.
Right. Okay. So that certainly is one piece of the getting your money's worth. What about all these foreclosures? I've read in the paper how the houses are ripped up, torn up, things are torn. Do you get much of that?
Absolutely. The houses that we look at, let me backtrack. Most of the houses that we purchase, we spend an average of $35,000 to $40,000 to renovate. It used to be a little bit less.
Right.
The reason that it's more is there are more foreclosures, more disrepair, more people had less money to do their repairs.
Or they got angry and destroyed the house.
And took it out on the walls.
Yeah, took it out on the walls, took it out on the kitchen appliances.
Right. So there are many houses that we go into that are disastrous. But we take that into consideration when we make the offer on the house, how much we're going to have to spend to bring it to move-in condition.
Mitch, you've been in real estate, what'd you say, 23 years?
23 years.
23 years. Did you ever anticipate anything like this happening?
No, I've been through up and down markets. I remember interest rates at 16, 18%. I remember them at 5.5%. I've never seen it quite like this. But, you know, in every bad situation, there is opportunity. Opportunity for me, opportunity for first-time home buyers.
Right, exactly. But is it fair to say that the American dream of owning your own home is still alive and well?
I could tell you that if anybody comes by my office on a weekend where we're bringing in about 100 potential first-time home buyers, really? The answer is for sure yes. Really?
And how do potential home buyers find you?
Well, we advertise in all the major dailies in New York.
That's how I found out about you.
Right.
I saw that logo, We Buy Ugly Houses.
Correct. You can go to the HomeVestors website, and it will show you the nearest franchisee to you in your particular area. Right. So we're readily available.
You know, owning real estate in this country has traditionally been a very good way to acquire wealth, to acquire riches. Is that still true?
I believe it's still true, as long as when you purchase, you know what you're purchasing for and what the value is today. Right. You know, you can't purchase, especially today, on a pipe dream. You have to make sure that you know your value.
That's why we got in trouble, right?
Absolutely. So as long as you know your value and you know your data, and you have real information, and you're clear as to what it's going to cost you, absolutely, it's still the dream.
Yeah. And how do you vet folks that come to you? They come to you already vetted to be buyers?
Some are, some aren't. Some of them we need to help. You know, many people who come into the office are not income worthy or credit worthy, and as much as they want to buy a house, no way, no how.
When folks have a mortgage and you buy their house for them, their mortgage, can you give them the money directly, or are you obligated to give the money back to the bank? Since
no, the mortgage payoff has to go directly to the mortgage company or the bank or the servicer, right there at the closing.
Right, so at the closing, that money goes to the bank. And if there's a short or if there's a plus, that's between the original owner and the bank.
The plus, the person we're buying it from would get.
Well, automatically at the closing.
The short has to be agreed to in writing, so there's nothing much to give anyone except for what the bank is getting.
And does that have to be done in writing before you?
Absolutely.
Like before the closing?
Absolutely. If it's not in writing, we can't do it.
Then you can't get the clear title for the new buyer.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Well, you know, I wanted to have you on because I think it's good in these times to give folks who are thinking about buying a house a little bit of hope that there is another way to do it.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's HomeVestors. You guys advertise under We Buy Ugly Houses. But that shouldn't scare anybody away. By the time they come to you to buy the house, you've made it pretty.
Well, we buy ugly houses, and then we have another motto on the other side. We sell lovely homes.
Oh, okay. So you buy ugly houses and you sell lovely homes.
Correct.
Yeah. Do you see this housing debacle working its way through the pipe and coming to an end?
Well, you know, I would like to think I'm relatively young, but I've seen a lot of cycles. I don't see why this should be different than any other cycle. It may be a little more drastic on this side.
But you think history's going to hold up?
Absolutely, and a great time to buy right now.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for someone who's got a good background to invest in the American dream.
The best I've seen in 23 years.
Right. Thanks much for being on the show. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth. I'm Judith West. Thanks for watching.